I did this morning, and this is something that I often do, but sometimes I just kind of lay in bed for hours because I'm afraid to get up and check my messages. It gives me that kind of anxiety, especially when I say something that I know might not go over well. I can live with people not liking me, but I can't live with people not liking me unfairly, I guess. Being yourself and being weird and stuff doesn't mean that you can't mess up. And it always feels just so sudden and out of left field for me. Somebody was telling me how to deal with a sort of anxiety that, that you might have just fucked things up with people or you're just waiting is, well, remember what happened the last time? And you know what? That doesn't help. That doesn't help. People might say things like you have an anxious attachment style because, your parents weren't super reliable. And I mean, I think that just indicates to me that an anxious attachment style is a reasonable thing to have. Like, people do sometimes just kind of drop out of your existence for no real discernible reason. The only difference between waiting for somebody to come back to talk to you for 5 minutes and 5 years is just how long it's been, but it always starts out the same. And I'm just personally not willing to have the sort of detachment that's just, well, I don't care, move on to other people, because I'm just not sure that that's true. Not every instance of a failed relationship, whether it's a friendship or a romantic relationship that, goes south, is an instance of, well, you just weren't good for each other. Sometimes people fuck up. And, I often feel kind of bad about myself for being anxious about this sort of thing when it seems like there's so many other things that I should be worried about. But I really feel like I'm always pulling the weight in every sort of social interaction. I guess maybe I'm just extroverted and outgoing, but I feel like if I don't do anything in social situations, nothing ever gets done. I guess there's just all this culture talking about just red flags and like things to absolutely avoid. But I feel like a lot of red flags aren't really red flags, but I feel like people just want to feel like they can know. I wish that I could feel like I could know, but I just feel like I can't. I'm a strong believer in a certain sense, playing the hand that you've been dealt and sticking through with it. I can't tell you how many times I've been at a point where people are just like, don't be anxious with me, you're fine. And then it's just like, a week later, that's no, not really. And I think that, people often have a lot of difficulty understanding that for me, even if I'm not bothering a person, I still might not be okay with being as forward as some other people are. I guess it's sort of like imagine you're married and you're talking to somebody and they're like, don't worry about hitting on me and stuff. I don't mind. Like, that's not really to the point. I have really bad social anxiety and I'm autistic, but I guess I'm really good at just suppressing my anxiety and just doing things anyway, most of the time. But, and I often feel like it's sort of my duty to kind of help out the other people who might not be as good as doing that as I am. But that so often just ends in disaster. And I feel like I just have no idea what to regulate myself by. Talking about Confucius again, one of my favorite things he says is that you shouldn't worry about whether you occupy a certain post or a position. You should only concern yourself about whether or not you're worth having that position. And I guess just, again, talking about relationships, whether they're friendships, romantic relationships, I guess, I remind myself that being by yourself doesn't mean that you're a bad person. And I guess I just like to, try to ask myself about whether or not I am doing a good enough job for any of those things. And I guess just feeling like, I guess that should be good enough. Like, I feel like, generally speaking, you should be good to everybody. But I also feel like if you should be good to everybody, even more so, should you be good to, your parents, your spouse, and whatnot. Like, I generally think that being bad towards your spouse is one of the most unacceptable things. And I guess then I would say that being a good spouse, if that ever happened, would be one of the primary goals of my life. But I feel like I should just be satisfied to know that I would be a good spouse and then actually getting over there should be a secondary thing that I shouldn't really find to be that important. I generally think that I should just be concerned with whether or not I'm doing the right or the wrong thing, and everything else is just a secondary distraction. There's, a Chinese saying that to lose one's life is a small thing compared to the loss of one's integrity. And I guess I do really resonate with that sort of death before dishonor type culture. I don't really mean to alarm anybody or anything or make anybody think I'm depressed. I'm not. I'm pretty okay. But I guess to me, the concept of killing yourself because you've made a social blunder is not a foreign alien idea to me. I guess it's something that I often read about, that I often see, that people that I admire have done. I mean, I own a katana, There have been days where I felt like my social skills are just so bad that the only really honorable, decent thing for me to do would just be to permanently remove myself from society. Again, not because I'm depressed, but because that's just the sort of culture that I'm familiar with. There's a story that I really like repeating about a Roman senator, and this one time he disemboweled himself in front of the whole Senate, and he started throwing his organs at them. He was so upset with them. And, again, just reading ancient texts and Stoic texts, just, killing yourself isn't really... I think that in modern Western society we have a bit of a prejudice against it. And I would probably be the worst person to talk to if you were trying to get talked out of a suicide. I hope I don't get taken down for saying this sort of thing. But I guess I would say still my personal feelings is I don't really think that it's my decision to make for people if I'm going to, permanently remove myself from their life like that. I don't think that it'd be okay to leave a kid because you thought that you'd be a bad father for them. I don't think that that's, that it's my place to be doing that sort of thing. I think a lot about what sort of things are and are not in my place to do. I just hope that I can learn to manage things with people someday. I feel like I have so many days that are just, again, consumed by anxiety. And, I'd rather be productive. I'd rather, do things and work on things that I enjoy. But I keep on telling myself, it's okay, it's just for now. One day you're going to get settled in life and you don't have to be, worried about managing things with people. But I'm just unsure that day is ever going to come. I just kind of dawdle around, just being so anxious. I pace a lot. Most people would probably say that I'm mentally ill, but to me, I guess there's just nothing about that says that my way of understanding things is wrong. Or otherwise, I don't know how it could really be proved that I am mentally ill. Do I have a lot of life experiences that might have led to me thinking this way? Probably. But, people often say that you learn from experience. I think that's just the way the world is. Everything is just luck. And I guess one thing that I really like about ancient culture is when you think about it, just how often pretty much anybody living in an ancient society would go through things that, we today would consider to be highly traumatic. Most schools of philosophy sprang up in very, very turbulent times.